verbatim from the book. I'm sort of adding things that I think are helpful, that I found helpful. But the basic idea is that there are some basic concepts in the opening, which he calls proverbs, which help you decide what to do with the moves that you have available. And he's got 18 or 20 of them. Some of them are introductory, some are advanced. I'm trying to meld them in a little bit because I know we've got some beginners here and some little more intermediate players. And we've gone over the first group of them. And what I want to do today is to go over them again, just to mention what they are. And then we'll spend the rest of the session looking at the alternative, looking at positions and then coming up with what the proper play is and also why it's the proper play. They'll follow the proverbs. And the idea here is that if you can learn and understand these proverbs, that your opening play will be a very high quality. Now the proverbs for the most part are pretty simple, but they don't always apply, and sometimes they're contradictory to other proverbs, and so you have to know what the hierarchy is. So let's briefly go through what the proverbs were. And the first one is very simple, and it's hit, and that's going to apply to anywhere on your inner board, or either outfield. It does not apply on your inner board. So for a 2-4, and I'll go through this quickly so we get started. You want to hit this. That's the first thing you do, and then the question is, what do you do with the 4? We've gone over that in one session, so I don't want to go over that. But that's the idea: is you want to hit. If you have the chance to hit, it's almost always right to hit in the opening. The second concept, and this one encompasses a couple of proverbs that Michi came up with, but I found it more convenient to complicate it because it's easier. I found it easier to remember, even though it was more complicated. And that is, the idea here is that you have certain points on the board which you want to make. And it's the 5-point here, the 4-point, and the bar point, or the 7. And you want to make those points if you can, and you want to make them with that priority. So it's the 5-point is more important than the 4, which is more important than the 7. Now, at times you can make the defensive, on the defense, and I call this the offensive side. The defensive side also has these points, defensive 5, 4, and bar, and they have the same priority. If you have the option of making, you want to make the defensive 5-point over the 4 over the bar. Now you have offensive points and defensive points. In general, you're going to want to make the offensive 5 over the defensive 5 over the offensive 4 over the defensive 4 over the offensive bar over the offense. So that's your priority. And I say that will steer you very well, other things being equal. Now, if you get past the opening, sometimes other things aren't equal, and we'll cover that a little bit today. But that's the basic idea. So, for instance, we have a 4-2 to play. Let's just some things you could do. We'll look at it. I don't want to spend a lot of time. The top play is making the defensive 5-point. We could also make the second best play is making the offensive 4-point. So this is why I say the defensive 5 is better than the offensive 4. And if you remember that priority, you will get this right. And this is only a small error. If you don't, but every little bit helps. A part of also part of this idea, and it's a separate. Michi has it as a separate proverb, but but I tried to incorporate it is that you want to fight for. You also want to fight for the good point. So let me see if I have one handy. That's not one of them. Well, let's just do Let's put this one here. Okay, like a 2-1. So particularly for beginners, have a problem with this because the right play is going to be hit here. And this is called fighting for the strong point. And your opponent is threatening to make his 5-point, and you want to try to keep him from doing that. And so you're going to hit, even though there are quite a lot of return shots, which are going to send you back if you get hit. You know, any 5 or any entering number with a 4 is going to send you back. But the idea early on is that if you can make that point, you have a tremendous advantage. If you get hit, okay, your opponent doesn't have a board to worry about, and you can just come in and maybe make a defensive point, and it's not so bad. But the idea is that it's worth the risk, and you don't want your opponent to make that 5 points. So that's part of the proverb called fighting for the strong point. Okay, let's go. Now, those are probably the key, the top priority proverbs for the opening. We also, there are also some other, what I would call secondary priorities, and they fall into the proverbs of, one is called make an outfield point. So, and the idea here is that, okay, we have a 4-2 to play in this example. We'd like to make the 5-point, the 4 or the bar or some good point, or we'd like to hit, and now our partner doesn't have any numbers out in the hitting zone. So what do we do? And here we come in and we see we can make this point. So we don't have, we can't hit, we can't make one of the strong points. So we can, then the next priority is, okay, make an outfield point. Now there's another proverb that is incorporated is in terms of the hierarchy of points. We could fight for this point, fight for the 5-point here by taking the 4, and that's the second best play, using the 4 to go from 9 to 5. However, there's another proverb that actually Michi calls this more an intermediate proverb, but it's better to make the point than to hit loose. So if you can make an outfield point, that's generally better than hitting loose on the inner board, even when it's one of the strong points. Okay. Another proverb that we went over is called unstacking, and Michi calls it actually break the mountain. And when we start the game, we've got 5 checkers here and 5 at the 6-point and 5 checkers on the midpoint. So we want to get those checkers into the game by unstacking them. This is called a stack. One checker is called a blot. 2 checkers on a point on a pip is called a point. You add the 3rd checker, now you have a point and a spare. And if you had a 4th checker, you've got 2 spares. You generally don't need more than 2 spares. In fact, 2 spares is probably more than you need. But if you add a 5th checker, now you've got a stack. And so you want to get these checkers into the game somehow by moving them, preferably someplace useful. Okay, so we have a 2-2 to play here. And, there are a number of things we could do. It's almost always right here to make the 4-point when you've got 6 checkers here, because that makes a strong point and gets them into the game. And then you want to come down from the midpoint to unstack. Note that the second best play comes up here, but it's not quite as good as here. And mostly because we have a lot of opportunities still to make this 5-point. And we made the 4, if you can make the 6, 5, and 4, you have a very strong board. Note that we could also make the defense 5-1, which is a very strong point, but There's another, this is not a Michi proverb, this is some, another thing that is probably worth thinking of as a proverb is, if you're not going to make the 5 point, you need to do at least 2 other good things. And really 3. So here we're doing 3 good things, 4 good things, really. We're unstacking this point and making a strong point. That's 1, 2. We're unstacking here is 3, and we're making a good point, an outfield point here. So that's really doing 4 things, which is why this is so much better than just making the 5 point. Okay, there's another, when we talk about unstacking, there's another, I don't remember if Michi makes it a proverb or not, but for the midpoint, we want to unstack the midpoint, but see if I have a example of this, but we want to think twice before stripping the midpoint. This doesn't it. And so stripping the midpoint is simply leaving just 2 points on the midpoint. The midpoint is an important area because it covers the outfield here. If your opponent has a checker back, he's got to get this checker out. And now that we've blocked his bar point, this checker has to come out here before it can go to safety over there. So we want to keep a checker here to cover the outfield. If we have, just look at this one. We could do, this is the right play, but because it doesn't, it leaves a spare there to cover the outfield. This is actually not that better, not that much worse, but this point is stripped. If these checkers move out of the way and black puts a checker out in the outfield here, then if we want to break that, if we want to hit that checker, we've got to break our midpoint. Okay, so that's kind of a, again, I don't remember if Michi calls that a proverb, but just a sub-proverb maybe. So think twice before you strip your midpoint. There may be a better move with it. Okay, so now what I want to do now is we're going to take all these concepts and try to put them into practice. And so the idea here is we've got a roll, and we want to think through the proverbs and figure out what the best move is, and why. And so we're going to, what are we going to do, and what proverbs are we covering here? And there may be some where the proverbs may contradict each other, or it's not clear. So we want to understand the hierarchies of the different proverbs. Okay, so let's. So what do we do here? So and what do we do here and why? So take a look at this position. We got 4-2 to play from the bar. And does anyone want to take a shot at this?
Bar 21, 13, 11.
Good. And now why? To me, it's just,
well, you're making the defensive 4 point, which is good. You're making an outfield point, a point, which is good as well. And you have to enter, so it's either 2 or 4. So you have to pick between the 2 or 4.
Right. Okay. Well, you're not making the defensive 4 point, but
well, you're
right. You're slotting it, basically. But the point is that, okay, and with what I call the kind of the secondary proverbs, to make the outfield point or unstack, your first step should be, can I hit in the opponent's inner board or in the outfield, and that's kind of your first priority early in the game, and you can't. So skip that one. Then you say, well, can I make a strong point? And you can't. You've already got the strong point in the 5 point, but you can't do anything better than this. So then the idea is, well, can I make an outfield point? And well, yeah, you can. Okay, by using the 2 to go from here. So that way, that means you're going to enter on the 4 and cover the 2. Cover with the 2.
So if that was 4-3, though, then would you make the 20? The defensive 4 point. The roll, yeah.
Well, the priority is Well, okay, here's a case where it matters, the position matters, but for the opening, you have a chance to hit
Okay.
a checker back, so that's the priority in the opening. Now, you know, if your opponent had something like this, that's still hit. Huh, I'm surprised. Let's make it a little different. There are going to be some positions that still hit. Okay. There are some positions that you're going to want to make this point over hitting. This is, I couldn't come up with one here in this scenario, probably because we already had the 5 point and there's another checker back. But in any case, but you know, for now, which is why, you know, this is a good rule, even though, you know, we'll get to some position, I think eventually, I don't know if in today's session, but there will be positions where you want to make the point over hitting. But for now, early in the game, stick with the idea of just hitting. If you can hit, you hit. Okay. Look at another one.
But what was the right answer with that 4-2?
It was to,
Come in on the 21 and make the 11, or?
yes. Yeah, it was to make the idea was, okay, we can't, it was to make the 11. It was make the outfield point. That was the proverb that applied. So you come in with the 4 and use the 2 to make the point. Okay. So now we've got a 5-3 to play. And what are we going to do and why?
We're gonna hit on the 5. Who? Well, maybe not. Hold on a second.
Ooh.
Thirteen, 8, 24, 21.
Okay. Now go through the proverbs and why. Well, let me start. Can we hit in the outfield? So
No.
the answer is no. There's the only blots are here and here, so we can't hit there. Can we make one of our strong points?
No.
No. Can we fight for a strong point?
Yes.
Yes, we can hit here. Okay, so that has a priority, but that, you know, that would tell us to hit there. Can we make an outfield point?
No.
No. Can we unstack? Well, by going 3 here, we've unstacked there. And the only 5, these don't move 5, so the other 5 is down here, we unstack there. So actually we don't unstack the 8, but we're gonna stack the midpoint. Okay, so those things should tell you that hitting loose on the 5 is the right play. You're fighting for the good point. That's the only proverb that comes into play in this situation. And now it's you know, this was a tough one for beginners to see because you got a blot here, you got a blot there, you know, you've got lots of blots. But you know, if he doesn't hit you here, you make this 5 point, you are in a very strong position. You have a very strong chance of winning this game and possibly getting a gammon. Now, it's not, you know, if you look at here, this play is still a 50-50 game. I mean, have a little advantage because you might get hit. But black has no inner board, just a 6 point. And we have 2 checkers back. You know, if we get hit, maybe we can make a strong point back there. But you know, these proverbs tell you to hit here, which, you know, most beginners, novices are reluctant to do that. because you're putting yourself under the gun here, but it is the right play. And by a lot, anything else is a blunder. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Okay, what do we do and why?
Hit and cover on the 4 point.
Well, we got to come in from the bar.
Oh, you're right.
Otherwise, that would be the right play.
It doesn't seem to go along with the proverb, but I come in on the 2 and make the 9.
Yeah.
Well, it does correspond to a proverb. So let's go through the order again. We can't hit in the outfield. If we could hit this one, we would. We can't make a strong point. We could fight for it by hitting off the 4 with either a 4 or a 2. We can make an outfield point. We can make this point. And we can unstack by moving one of these checkers or one of those checkers. So fighting for the point by hitting here would unstack as well as coming down here. But we know from another proverb here that the priority is to make the point, and that has a priority over hitting loose on the inner board. And so the right play is going to come in on the 2, cover with the 4. And the next best play would be to hit here. But covering the outfield point is stronger than hitting loose. Okay. This is a variation. Oops. I gave you the answers, but sorry about that. So what do we do here and why?
Same thing.
Bar 23, 10, 9.
Yeah, it's the same position or same idea. It's just that because we can't hit in the outfield. We could fight for this point, or we could make this point. And so here, it's not a blunder to fight for this point here, because it's the 5 point. You have more covers. But it's still correct to make the outfield point. So here we say, okay, what we're doing is making the outfield point, and that has priority over fighting over the strong point. Okay. Okay, what do we do here?
8, 5, 6, 5.
No, you gotta come in.
We're coming in off the bar.
Oh, I
That's
keep,
Don't forget that.
I'd say
Come in
bar
on
to
the
20.
3 and make your opponent's 5 point.
Oh,
So, okay, make the points 5 point. Yeah, that's okay. Again, we can't hit in the outfield. We can't actually make a strong point, which should make the 5 point. We could come in and hit loose here and or here and fight for a strong point. So what I've told you is, well, the rule was make the outfield point. And we don't have that in here. So, but we can make the 5 point or hit loose on the 5 point. Now this one, and I would do this one, and it would be slightly wrong. Let's do it at a little higher level, see if it matters. Yeah, it's not quite an error. It's a little bit less. I'm not sure if we rolled it out that it would do it better. So this one, it sort of breaks the rule of fighting for a point rather than making a point. But I would make the point. It's a little bit unusual because you've got, black has so many blots lying around. And if you hit him here, he comes in off the bar and he can't do anything really that useful otherwise. But so this is a little bit of an exception where you might get the wrong play, but it's not off by very much. So I would stick with the rule and play it. And if this is the biggest error you make, then you're doing very well. Okay, and I wouldn't try to memorize that. I would just stick with the rule. Make the 5 point. You can make it. But again, with all the Beckham, these proverbs and rules, they're not infallible. There are exceptions which are confusing, and there's not much you can do about it. But if you stick with the rules, you'll do very well. Okay, 3-1.
Hit twice.
I'm gonna venture 8. Yeah, hit twice. I was gonna say the same thing. 8-5-4.
Okay.
I would think just make the 5 point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's enough to blitz at this point anyway.
Yeah. Well, okay. So those are, we haven't talked about blitzing or hitting 2. Actually, that's the next section will be what Michi calls tiger play, which is hitting twice. And so, that doesn't fall within the teaching. So the real options here that I would look at, okay, we can't hit in the outfield. We can make a 5 point, either this one, defensive 5 point, or the offensive 5 point. And so, or we could hit twice, but we'll cover that later. But the person who said we don't have enough is exactly right. What we'll find out in the next section on tiger play is that you need to count your checkers in this what's called the zone, and we'll get into that later. But just for now, it's on this side, our side of the board, the offensive side of the board. And Michi's proverb is that 8 checkers are weak, 10 checkers are strong. And if you're in a weak position, you generally don't want to hit twice. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Here, we can make a 5 point and put him on the bar, or we could make our defensive 5 point. So even if this one wasn't here, we'd want to consider we probably would want to make that defensive 5 point. Now also, he's got a checker on the bar, and we're going to put a second one on, and we're going to make a strong point. All those things make it a huge blunder to hit twice, and then making the defense 5 point doesn't even show up here. Again, if you can put your opponent on the bar and make your 5 point, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better play than that. Okay. What are we on? Okay, so what are we going to do here and why?
Come in on the 1 and make the opponent's 5.
Yeah, and again, why are we doing that?
There's not really a better. Everything else leaves us too exposed.
Yeah. Well,
It
again, we
fights for
can't.
an anchor too.
This is the only guy in the outfield. We can't hit him. All right, so we can't do that. We can make a strong point. We can make the 5 point. We could fight for the strong point by coming in on either the 3 or the 1 and hitting here. We come in on the 3 and hit with the 1 to unstack, or we can come on the 1 and make this 5 point. And so generally, actually we saw kind of an exception last time, but we're going to want to, if we can make the 5 point, that's going to be better than hitting loose. And so in this case, it's a blunder to hit this one. I'm surprised that this is better than this one because we're unstacking here. But what it has to do with it, this is a good defensive position for a checker to be, and we're behind in the race with this. So, but that's a separate matter. So, but if you stick with the basic rules, okay, we can make the 5 point. Let's make the 5 point. That's a good thing to do. And it's within our, it falls in the hierarchy of priorities as the best play. Okay, let's just do a couple more. We're started a little bit late and we're going a little bit over. So we got 2 more to look at. Okay, so what do we do here and why?
Make the 20 point.
How about hitting the
Oh,
outfield?
sorry, Kenny.
I think hit the outfield.
Yeah. So yeah, we go through our list. We can hit in the outfield, and that's normally the right thing to do. We can make the defensive 5 point, which is also a strong move, or we can make the offensive 4 point. So this is a case where you're gonna want to hit this checker, other things being equal. Now the question here, the tricky part here is, are they equal? And this is something that you kind of have to work on it to know. They're not equal. Other things aren't equal here. Oops. And what makes them not equal here? Any ideas why these positions? There's something in this position that tells you not to hit here, but to make this 5 point instead.
Because it's we've already made the 21 point, the 4 point. They'd have a prime, 3 point prime.
Yeah, there are a number of things. Black has made hit 4 points, so he has a stronger board. Okay, if we come out here and hit, that's not a terrible play. But if we get hit back, now we have a problem because Black has the stronger board. And that's really the defining one here. Let's look at a variation of this. Okay, now we have equal boards. And now what's the right play? Well, the right play here is to hit. Okay, so this is when we get into this position, we're going a little bit farther into open. When we're talking about little concepts, a little bit beyond the the introductory level. We're kind of getting into sort of intermediate concepts here. But the idea is here that other things being equal, you're going to want to hit. Now here we both have the same board, so other things are pretty much equal, more equal anyway. And so the right move is to hit. When we didn't have these, I forget where they were, here maybe. The idea was the opponent has a better board. You want to play it a little bit safer, make the strong 5 point. This wasn't exactly where it was, but I think it was here. Okay, so now the rules that we've gone, the proverbs that we've gone over so far apply very, very well for the first 3 or 4 rolls. And a lot of them apply very well beyond that into sort of the middle game. However, once you get into the middle game, it gets a little more complicated and you've got to think a little bit more about your situation. And again, as I say, the proverbs are other things being equal. And here they're not quite equal. Your opponent has the 4 point, has the better board. So, okay, so it's 8:41, and we've gone a little bit past a lot of time, so we can, I guess, go into the Chouette portion for anyone who wants to play. How many people are interested in playing in the Chouette?
Phil is.
You got one? Okay.
I'm gonna have to pass.
Okay. Just anyone who wants to play in it. Because I've got some more examples if we want to do that. And if we only have, Karen, did you want to play in the Chouette?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, so I would play, so we have 3 people. Chouettes are better with 4 or more, so. And I'd
I'm
also say,
interested in playing, but I don't know how it works exactly.
okay, well, we'll show you how. I mean, I would recommend that if you don't know what a Chouette is or how to play, that you at least stick around and watch a little bit. It's a lot of fun. And particularly if you have like a family or if you have even beginners playing, where you try to explain what your move is, moves are, and you can argue about them and whatever. And it's a good way to learn how to play and to think about what your moves are and why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. And so if you have the proverbs that we just went over, those are good reasons, and they should convince most people to, that your move is right if you're following the proverbs.
How many points do you play in the Chouette? Or do you just play one game at a time?
Well, we play, they're called money games. We play one game at a time, and then when that game is over, we start a new game. And then we keep track of points. So, the winner of the game will get whatever points are there, and the losers of the game will lose whatever points. And it's the Chouette is also one person against the team. So the person who's in what's called the box, if they're playing 3 players and wins, a game for 1 point, will get 3 points, and each of the players on the team will lose 3 points for that.
So, Gary, there's no stakes in this, is there?
Well, typically there are, and here I think we on our first session we played a $5 Chouette, so each point was worth $5. If I don't know who, if you're a beginner, you probably don't want to play for money against players who are better than you are. That's not a good way to make money. And often
But you can basically drop out anytime. But anyway, Gary, thanks for this set of lessons. I feel like I learned some things, and I'm motivated to go back and read Michi's book again. So yeah. Thanks. We'll do it again in 2 weeks. Lisa,